Howdy guys, you are welcome to Dr. Mo's Health Blog. Today we are going to be talking about the gut microbiome. Now the healthy human being has three communities of living organisms that are living together in harmony. The first community, of course, is the host community of cells, which are the human cells that number about 30 trillion. The second and the third communities are called the human microbiome. The human microbiome consists of skin microbiome and the gut microbiome. Today we are going to be focusing on gut microbiome. Now the gut microbiome are all the microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, and fungi that live within the gut, mostly in the distal gut, but also in the mouth, and to some extent in the small intestines. Now, these bacteria live there, are hosted by the human cells, and receive provision of food, oxygen, nutrients, and other things, and protection from the human community. They, in return, provide factors or chemicals or carry out some services to the human body that helps the human body to live a healthy and long life. Now, to better understand how the gut microbiome functions, we need to first of all classify these microbacteria into microorganisms into three different classes. The first are the good, then the bad, and then the ugly. The ugly ones are not normally found in the gut. They are the pathogens like Shigella, Salmonella, and these, whenever they make an appearance, they usually cause trouble. They usually cause disease, and therefore they are not normal and will not be discussed further as part of the gut microbiome. The second group are the good guys. The good guys have several functions that they perform. The first function is that they occupy space. Now there's only so much space, and for dangerous bacteria to be able to penetrate the body, they need to first attach themselves, adhere to certain portals within the cells of the intestinal wall before they can develop a bridgehead to penetrate. When all these portals are occupied by about 100 trillion cells, there is no space for any other harmful bacteria to gain access. These resident bacteria or microbiome also produce some substances that are offensive to invading bacteria and thereby prevent them from getting attached to the surface of the intestinal lining. Another function that the gut microbiome performs is that it helps the immune system to practice against the natural immune system to practice against pathogens. This is because the gut microbiome cells are distant cousins of pathogenic bacteria, just that they lack virulence factors to penetrate. And so, by studying this gut microbiome, the immune system is better able to develop an arsenal of factors that can also tackle the the pathogenic bacteria. So these are some of the functions of good bacteria. The other function is that they tend to produce vitamins. The commonest vitamin that comes to mind is vitamin K. Without the good guys, we will not be able to have enough vitamin K to produce clotting factors. Other factors, other phytonutrients like spermidine are also produced by gut bacteria to supplement endogenous production. Now, polyphenols that are found in olive oil, in coffee, tea, garlic, and all this, and most of this what we call prebiotic foods cannot, and in fact fiber, cannot be processed by the human intestines. They simply don't have the enzymes to do that. But these gut bacteria will digest these polyphenols and fibers and produce factors that the body can use to live a healthy life. Now, of particular significance is fiber. Fiber is like inulin, which are found in certain foods, can be digested by the good guys. The good guys will digest this and produce short-chain fatty acids like butyric acid, propionic acid, and acetic acid. These short-chain fatty acids help to feed the gut because of the low oxygen levels within the gut. The gut depends on a pathway called beta oxidation, and it is these short-chain fatty acids that undergo beta oxidation very fast. So that is one of the functions of the short-chain fatty acids. The second function is that they also act against damaged cells. Now, damaged cells within the intestinal wall lack the ability to carry out beta oxidation, and therefore they are forced to commit suicide or in a process called apoptosis. The third thing that they do, especially at acetic acid and propionic acid, is that they stimulate gluconeogenesis, thereby reducing the need for external glucose. And so if you have this good bacteria, you don't need to eat so much because glucose will be produced within your liver through a process of gluconeogenesis. Acetic acid also goes to the brain and stimulates the satiety center, tells the satiety center, oh, well, you've eaten enough. And so it shuts down your desire to eat. And so people who have good bacteria in their gut tend to be slim and fit, not to be fat, obese, insulin insensitive, hypertensive, and all the other gamut of diseases that follows insulin insensitivity and hyperinsulinemia can thus be avoided. How about the bad guys? The bad guys are really bad because some of the bad guys have a craving for sugar, for glucose. And what they do is that whenever you eat substances rich in sugar, such as fizzy drinks and junk food, these bad guys will produce dopamine. Now, this dopamine diffuses into the blood, goes to the brain, and you know that dopamine is the neurotransmitter of craving, okay, and addiction. So each time you eat sugar, you feel happy because those bacteria produce dopamine. So it makes you to eat, to crave junk food, to crave sugar. So if you have this bad bacteria, you are likely to be obese, insulin insensitive, hyperinsulinemic, and develop type 2 diabetes and all the consequences that follow. Bad bacteria also are responsible for most of the food allergies. So if you're, for instance, you're allergic to, let's say, milk, it's because the bad guys don't like milk. So whenever you drink milk, they will produce noxious substances that will cause the granulation of mast cells, and you feel bad. You might vomit, you might develop urticarial rash and other symptoms that are associated with um, being allergic to foods. Now, another thing that the bad guys can do is to give you mood changes, anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. How can these organisms do that? They do that because they produce a lot of serotonin. They produce serotonin, and you know that serotonin, and when it diffuses into the blood, it crosses into the blood-brain barrier. You know, serotonin is an excitatory neurotransmitter, and thereby it causes you to develop anxiety, depression, and some form of mood disorder. But when you have good bacteria, this does not happen. So, what are the clinical implications of this? Well, it is good for you to eat foods that promote good bacteria to grow. Foods that are called prebiotics, foods that contain a lot of fiber, foods that contain a lot of polyphenols, foods that contain fiber, a lot of polyphenols, food that are not rich in refined sugars. Such foods will help you to grow good bacteria. Fermented foods too. Fermented foods are also very good because they contain what is called probiotics. Probiotics are live, good bacteria like lactobacillus, which is found in foods like yogurt, kombucha, kefir, and some other foods that are fermented. So here in Africa, we have other fermented foods apart from yogurt. We have local seasonings that are fermented legumes that you can use to season your food. You have dawa dawa, you have okpehe. These are things that are fermented and contain a lot of probiotics and prebiotics and postbiotics that can help you to grow good gut bacteria instead of using MSG or bouillon cubes, which will release glutamate into your system and go to the brain. This glutamate is also an excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, glutaminergic cells, neurons, they call them. And so you might develop what is called Chinese restaurant syndrome from taking this MSG. And MSG, the glutamate, also feeds cancer cells, encourages them to grow fast. But when you eat these local fermented foods, you are less likely to have these problems. Another thing that can cause this is eating of junk food. Okay, the more junk food, the less varied your food is, the more the bad guys will grow. Then the use of broad spectrum antibiotics also kills all the good guys. If you use broad spectrum antibiotics for a prolonged period, what will happen is that you kill all the good guys and leave only a few bad guys to create problems for you. Another thing that has been implicated in, or that is known to cause good bacteria to grow, is to allow your children to dirty themselves up a bit. Allow them to play outdoors in the sand. Allow them to play outside in the sand. That way, they are able to consume some of these good bacteria. But when your children are over-hygienized, you keep them indoors, you don't allow them to play outside, you feed them junk food, then they will have bad bowels, bad bacteria in their bowels, and they may become very obese, hyperinsulin insulin, develop hyperinsulinemia, and insulin insensitivity. So this is gut microbiome for you. It will surprise you that one foremost gastroenterologist in America is trying to use this information to treat patients that have chronic inflammatory disease, leaky bowel syndrome, even obesity. So if somebody is obese because he has bad bacteria, he can take poop from somebody who is slim and has a good variety of bacteria. And then he will now use colonoscopy to put it inside the man's bowels. And that way, the good bacteria will replace the bad bacteria. And so there's a new frontier in medical practice. Now, traveling to the bush may also help you to increase your diversity of good bacteria. For instance, a leading US scientist who traveled to Africa to live with the Hadzab, a group of hunter-gatherers, found out that his microbiome diversity increased by 40%. But when he returned back to his normal urban settlement and started eating Western diet, he lost this advantage. So thank you very much. I'll take questions and comments from you. Please do kindly subscribe. It will not cost you a penny more to subscribe. Just hit the subscribe button. And if you like this video, like it and press the notification bell so that when anytime I publish a video, you can see it. Thank you very much for staying with me. Remain blessed.